Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another segment on the channel that I love doing, the Criterion Corner. This is the segment on my channel where I pick a film either in the Criterion Collection or streaming on the Criterion channel and talk about it in great detail and give you recommendations. And today's film I'm really excited about because it's from director Kelly Reichardt, and I had never seen a Kelly Reichardt film, although I have talked about her multiple times when I was in film school, seen clips from her movies, have always been really fascinated to watch her work because her work seems to be very slice of life, which is some of my favorite filmmaking. It's always something I gravitate towards because I love the way that character interactions can be conveyed in such a subtle and nuanced way that feels like a lived reality. And so I've always been excited to dive into her work, and today I'm going to be discussing her film Old Joy. Old Joy is directed by Kelly Reichardt. Soon-to-be father Mark feels the pressures of domestic responsibility closing in, so he is more than happy to accept when his old friend Kurt proposes a camping trip in the Oregon wilderness. During their time together, the men come to grips with the changes in their lives and the effect on their relationship. So the description sums this film up perfectly. It is a very simplistic movie. It has dialogue in it, but it's so quiet. At the beginning of the film, we're introduced to Mark, played by Daniel London, and we see him at home with his wife, and she is pregnant, and the two of them have this interaction where he is outside, she's inside. We're seeing sort of a visual separation between the characters, and he gets a call from his friend Kurt, played by Will Oldham, and he says like, hey dude, I've got this trip I want us to go on. I've got this hot springs that I want us to go visit in the Oregon wilderness. I think we're gonna have a great time together. And he wants to go really bad, but his wife is really far along in her pregnancy. You can tell through the interaction that they have at the beginning of the film through just glances that he wants to go, but he feels like he has to ask permission from her. She kind of gives him shit about the fact that he's asking for permission, and you see everything that you need to know about their relationship dynamic in a brief 8-minute scene, and it's framed so well, and the cinematography shows their power dynamics perfectly. And I was so excited from just those first few shots of the film to really dive in and watch this experience. And so he ends up agreeing to go. He gets all his stuff packed up. He brings his adorable dog with him on the trip together. And so he drives to his friend's house, and we essentially get every bit of information that we need to know about his friend through a really brief sequence where he pulls up to the friend's house, knocks on the door, he's nowhere to be found, and he goes and sits on the porch for a really long time before his friend shows up. So you can see that his friend is one of those very free-spirited, intellectual thinking types that's never on time, that how much can you really trust them to be there at the correct moments. And so when the two of them meet, it's like they hadn't even been apart. They click really quickly. They have a really great conversation. And then there's all these really cool shots of them driving around Oregon where we hear this political radio show talking about how the Democrats are approaching. There's some sort of equal rights thing that they're trying to fight for in the United States at that time period. You hear a lot about the political discourse, which I thought was really fascinating commentary on top of just the friendship that's being conveyed. And so the two of them embark on this journey together, and you can tell that the two men come from a very similar place, but are now in very different worlds. Mark's character was a very free-spirited young man who did a lot of the things that Kurt did when he was young, but now he's gotten this job, he's raising a family, or he's about to start raising a family. He's got all of these things in his life that he's having to approach, and he's trying to grow up essentially. This came out in 2006, so you're thinking really early cell phone technology. His cell phone's constantly going off throughout the beginning of the movie, taking calls from his wife, where you can tell that Kurt is very at one with nature. He seemed to kind of shut off the rest of the world. And the movie really, on its simplest terms, are these two friends who have been apart for a really long time that come back together, and it's can this thing still work? We're both in two completely different places in our lives now. Can we continue to have that bond and that relationship that we've had throughout our entire lives, or is it just going to completely split off? And the movie does it so perfectly. I absolutely adored this movie. I loved everything about it. It's so calming and inviting and beautifully shot. It's like almost hypnotic when you're watching it. You're immediately drawn into this world. But I said it in my Letterboxd review. It's also very nerve-wracking and uneasy when you watch interactions between these characters, because there's these build-ups that I feel like when you have friendships in your life, that you've been to a point where, you know, something happens that creates a rift or tension between you and the person you care about, and it's like you don't always voice it. Sometimes it's more subtle through like a glance or like a bodily movement or something of that nature. And Kelly Reichardt frames the camera with her cinematographer so perfectly that it captures those moments in a way that feels so lived. And I respect the hell out of her as a filmmaker for being able to capture those subtle nuances in such a brilliant and poignant way. And there aren't any really heavy emotional moments in this movie. It's not like there's any we're gonna fight scenes, or there's not any really like professing my love as a friend to you, or any of those types of moments. They're very simple life conversations that I think every person can put themselves in these characters' shoes and understand exactly where they're coming from. Whether you're on the side where you've been a more free-spirited person and had to kind of settle down and change your life to establish a family, or if you're that person who's kind of stuck in the past that's never really quote-unquote grown up, and that you're living that more free-spirited life that you want to travel, and you aren't really as concerned as settling down. And I think what Kelly Reichardt does perfectly is she doesn't demonize either lifestyle. It's just like shown to you, and it's like, here's the struggle that people have. And the thing about the movie is there's no real closure to who's right, because that's life, right? I mean, you choose one of those paths in your life, but which one is right, that's up to you. That's up to your life and what you think is best for you and your family and your own livelihood. And I just think it's so brilliant. And since I watched it, I can't stop thinking about it. It was so beautiful. It was so well made. I think Kelly Reichardt is a phenomenal director, and I cannot wait to watch her entire filmography, because if this was the start, I can only imagine just how amazing her entire filmography is. So I'm looking forward to checking more of her films out, and this is a huge recommendation to watch Old Joy. It is absolutely beautiful. Have you seen Old Joy? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was beautiful. I loved every second of it. I thought it was so perfectly well made, and I would highly recommend watching this one very soon. As always, if you like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.